Like, he told me that's what he was going to do. And I was like, okay, that seems like a crazy idea. And then he said, yeah, Ryan's going to come work at Sensation. Like, no.
And Brad is notorious for just throwing out crazy ideas with no context and not giving any background. And I'm like, yeah, I would definitely entertain it. I drove back over, sat down with all the owners and Brad, and by the end of that meeting, I had an offer to come work there. And very quickly, I kind of learned, okay, you're going to be a Sensation employee. You're not going to be a Scrapyard employee. Brad's got this. Like, this is his baby. He wants this to be his baby, and I eventually will have to step back and let him have this. There's definitely been times where I'm a little envious of not being with Scrapyard anymore.
And then he said he's going to leave Sensation. I'm like, what are you doing?
You just got this perfect.
Come on.
No, you get a job when you're 18, you clock in at 9, you leave at 5, and you do that for 40 years, and eventually you get to hang out and retire.
Yeah.
And we were just not about that.
My dad said that same thing where he was like, if you wanted to do procurement again, you could, right?
That is still an option.
It's the Depression era, just like my dad listens to these, so I know you're listening to this. I forgive you. I forgive you for saying that. But damn. Good morning and welcome to the Table Scraps podcast.
On today's podcast, we have our guest, Ryan Wenk, joining us.
Hi.
Today we found out that Ryan and I have been friends for 20 years now, and we take you all the way back to the beginning of that to where we are today with him working at Sensation and us running Scrapyard.
We hope you enjoy.
All right, well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So, Bob, how was your week?
My week was good. I feel like we're kind of getting ready to ramp up into summertime and springtime already, but spent a lot of time organizing a gear room for us just to get some stuff, a place to go at all times. Like we were talking about, everything, including the three of us, all of our gear, computers, was all in one room for the longest time. And now we've kind of spread out here, spread the gear out there. So we try to utilize our time off as effectively as we can before we get right back into it. So just a lot of that organization stuff, playing a lot of pond hockey, which is good.
How's the body feeling?
Rough. So last week, I got new skates, and for whatever reason, it just was a totally different experience than the skates I was using before. And so I kept falling. You know the falling where your feet go up and you just land on your back?
I'm familiar.
Yeah. You've done that before?
A couple
You
times.
skated once this year.
One time.
I did it probably 5 times in the same spot in the same night, and I am not kidding. It is the worst bruise I've ever seen on my lower back. There was so much blood that it just started to seep below my waist. So basically, it's just my ass. It's just a huge bruise right now.
And your arm.
And my arm.
You sound so enthusiastic about it, though.
Yeah, great time.
Yeah,
Love it out
love
there.
pond hockey.
I come down here the other day, Bobby's sitting in a new chair. He's got an ice pack tied to the back of the chair. His legs are up. I'm like, what is going on?
I've had to show people the bruise to get them to understand, I'm not just complaining, it's that bad. I'll show you after if you want to see it.
Deal.
It's pretty gnarly.
When did we play? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, when you were out here.
I played one day, and I barely played. I was just out there as a body, and I felt like I got hit by a truck the next day. And for the week after that, honestly, I completely underestimated, when you guys said, oh, you're going to be sore. I'm like, yeah. But I didn't feel like I was working that hard, and every part of my body hurt for, days after that.
You were hanging out down by the opposing net.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? You can't cherry pick, dude. And he's like, is it really cherry picking, though?
It's not cherry picking.
I'm like, fair enough.
Because it was the first time in a decade since I had played hockey, and the last time I'd actually played was here when we were 18.
You looked great out there.
You guys just need an extra body. Stop buttering me up.
I don't play, but I did go out and help shovel, and I was really sore even just from shoveling. So
That's part of it. That's definitely a big
I couldn't
part of
even
it.
raise my arms above my head. They were so sore from
No
shoveling.
shame. I was in the same exact
And then
situation.
Brad was freaking out there with 2 shovels yesterday, doing the whole thing by himself.
Well, we've been doing it a lot this year, so building up the endurance.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a good workout.
Oh, and there's a very specific way to shovel the pond.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, Because if
Did-
you do it, if you
Did
do
you
it
do
wrong,
it? Did you do it the wrong
Oh
way?
yeah. And skate.
I thought I was
going to
lose her. I thought she was just gonna get out of there, but
What are you on week 5 now of skating?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
It's got to be. I mean, it's for sure the longest in a long time that you've even been able to.
Yeah,
It's
I
been
think
a while.
after like the first 2 weeks, it was like we stopped thinking about, oh, we have every opportunity, we have to go skate. It's like, okay, this is going to be around for a while, because the
Yeah.
last 2 years we had 2 days 2 years ago, and then I think 2 or 3 days last year. So if there was an opportunity, we were like, everybody's got to come and play. And we've kind of cooled it on that because our bodies are just breaking down, and we're trying to play every
Yeah.
night. And I'm like, Katie, I never see you.
Yeah.
I'm just shoveling or playing hockey every day.
Or watering the rink.
Yeah, that takes a while.
Everyone was pretty gung ho there at the beginning.
Yeah.
It takes a toll.
Didn't know how long it was going to last.
No, soaking it all in. I hope we get another month of it, honestly. And it keeps snowing every day.
Yeah.
It's a real winter for the first time in years.
Yeah.
Didn't see it coming.
No.
I thought we were gonna have a warm winter.
I never expect real winter
Yeah.
down here because it's been since we were kids, since we've really had it. And then living in Marquette, you just don't really get winters like that anywhere outside of the UP.
Yeah.
And this is nowhere near it, but it just feels good knowing there's snow. Like it's snowing when I walked in right now. It's just nice.
Yeah, like you actually are walking through snow.
Yes. I'm okay if it's cold as long as there's snow. Cold without
agree with
snow
that.
is just why.
You mentioned like back in the day when it used to snow a lot when we were kids, and I had somebody ask me the other day, they're like, oh yeah, Wenk's one of your boys, right? Like you guys go way back. And they didn't realize how far back it goes back. So
Most
I
people
thought it'd be
wouldn't.
cool to talk a little bit about our childhoods and growing up together, because people see us in the industry now, and I don't think they really realize how deep it goes with all three of us, really.
Mhm.
And then now Katie's in the fray.
Yeah, you've been in it for a
And
while
I
now.
met you through Wank, so
That's a good point.
I mean, I probably met you at least 2 years, 3 years before
Yeah.
you guys started dating.
I think even probably longer than that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you were young.
Yeah,
I
I was
remember.
young. I think it was like
We were all
16 or
young.
17. So yeah.
You,
Well-
you were Madeline's friend before that.
Yeah.
Madeline is Ryan's wife, so that
Yes.
you guys went back even further than that.
Mhm.
Yeah, she grew up like a town or in the same Lansing area and hung out with a lot of her Madeline's brother's friends. And then I met her at Madeline's cottage. Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't even know how long ago that was.
Yeah,
it
I
had
don't
to have
know
been
either.
10
Definitely
years
a long
now.
time ago. Yeah.
Probably.
Probably more than that.
Yeah, probably.
We're getting old, Ryan.
We are.
But it is funny because I do have people who will reach out to me and they'll ask questions about like whether they're asking about Sensation and doing marketing or whatever. And they'll be like, yeah, I know, you know Brad, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know Brad really well. Known him forever, you know,
Yeah.
probably longer than most people I hang out with day to day.
Well, thinking about it, I think it's probably been 20 years, like 12, 13. Is that about?
It probably is 20. Yeah, because
Middle
we would have
school?
been
Yeah, it would have been 8th grade,
ninth.
9th grade.
Yeah, because I didn't live here in
I think
eighth
we're
grade.
still
20
like-
years.
Yeah,
That's
13.
20 years ago.
That'd be
Yeah.
20. That was 2013 to 2014 is when we were freshmen, I think, right? Or I'm sorry, 2004 to 2005.
Yeah.
So it'd be 20 years that
Yeah.
we've known each other.
Yeah.
And I saw the question on the list of like growing up together, and I'm vaguely remembering one of you guys like talking about first time you met Wenk or something, and I don't remember who said it, but one of you guys was way off because I remember meeting you long before. I think it was you.
Yeah, I think it was
my
Bob.
my version of meeting you for the first time was wrong. It was too far along. It was we
Yeah,
met
I don't remember
earlier.
exactly what you said, but
Oh,
I think it was
If
something
you're
to do
wondering
with
why all this hair just came, Costa's sitting right here. I've just been petting her while talking, and I talked with my hands. All of this dog hair just flew up in the air. All right, I'll stop. Get out of here. Go on. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just remember
Correct
you
me.
saying something like basketball here or something, or basketball in high school or something like that.
Okay.
But I remember meeting you like one of the first times I came over to hang out with Brad, our freshman year probably. And I don't know why we were hanging out, but we just ended up staying up till like 3 a.m. playing mini hoop basketball in the kitchen and trying to like be silent and also, you know, jumping 6 feet and slam dunking and knocking each other over
in the
That-
kitchen.
in the kitchen. I think
Yeah.
it was me, you, Brad, and Eric.
Okay.
I think. And
That
I
makes
know
sense.
Tyler and Brian were kind of around and stuff, obviously, but
Just one of those late nights where nobody wanted
Yeah.
to go to bed, having
Yeah.
too much fun.
I mean, just being a freshman in high school,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah,
But-
I was thinking about that too. for me, I'm 2 years younger than you guys, but I was always over. So any of Brad's friends, I ended up just hanging out with at a younger age. So yeah, I was probably 7th grade, something like that.
Yeah, I would say so. It was definitely when you were a child.
Yes.
You had your baby fat for sure back
I was
then.
just a wee lad. I'm still holding on to some of it, but most of it's gone.
And I remember the first time I met Brian was, and then I'll get to Brad, but Brad had asked me, I think we were freshman year, we were finishing basketball practice, and he was like, hey, we're going to go watch my brother play in his basketball game, and do you want to come? And I was like, okay. And I just went with Brad and his parents from the high school to the middle school and ended up sitting with them and ended up watching this electric basketball game where Brian scored a ton of points and had a game-winning buzzer beater at the end, and everyone rushed the court. And that was the first time sucks giving Brian those kudos. That's how I remember him.
If you know Brian, he doesn't need it.
But
I love that story.
Yeah, so that and then I can't really say, though, that I hung out with you and Brian much until, like, probably later in high school or after high school is when I really started hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, I would remember it more as like when I was 16.
Yeah.
When honestly I started drinking, and there was house parties and things like that. Took full advantage of hanging out with a couple of year older kids from myself.
Yeah.
That's when I really started to like bond with you guys, and that was like your whole friend group, really, just being around them. It was nice. It was a good experience for me. I didn't have an older sibling to grow up with, so to be around that group, I can't say that it was a great influence from like the, certain perspectives, let's say, but in a lot of ways, it was great. It was fun.
And then with Brad, I think I can pinpoint. I'm not sure this is the first time I met you, because I probably met you in middle school, because you went to Algonquin in 6th, 7th, 8th, right?
Just 7th and 8th.
Okay, so if I would have met you, I would have met you in 7th grade, because I was gone from here in 8th grade and came back in 9th.
Yep.
But I have a very specific memory of us in one of our gym classes, and we were sitting on like the bleacher bench thing waiting to do something, and I was talking to somebody, and they were like, what sports do you play? And I was like, I don't know, I have basketball. I was like, I would like to play football. I was like, golf is pretty cool. And then this kid, like 3 people down, just like chirps up, and he's like, oh, you golf? You should try out for golf. And I just like looked down at him, and I'm like, I don't know who this kid is. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to play golf. Like, I just like hitting golf balls once in a while. And then come to find out, like a week later, Brad was like the freshman on the golf team that was better than all the seniors and wrecking everybody and like all state, all this, whatever. And then after that, I feel like it was just sports that kind of like brought us together.
That was
like,
all we did outside of class, I feel like.
So did you join the golf team?
No.
Are you kidding me?
I can still
He's
barely
never
hit it.
picked up a golf club since.
The sports they're all good at, I am terrible at.
Yeah,
Golf,
that's all right.
hockey, I don't put
You're
any
good at
effort.
basketball.
I was okay. I played.
You could dunk.
I could dunk. I don't know if I still could, but that is pretty much all we did. Like we would, back in the day, we would wake up every day or very often, and we would go play basketball at like, I'm going to guess it was 5 a.m. or 5:30 in the
before
morning.
school, yeah.
We'd play every day, like no matter what. And if there was a window to play after school, we would play. And it didn't matter if it was basketball season or not, or we would just always be doing that. And then, freshman, sophomore into junior years, when I think we started like doing stuff that wasn't just sports, hanging out with the kids.
Extracurriculars.
Exactly. And then I think it just kind of ended up becoming like me, you, Ruhlman, and a couple other people that were like always connected.
Yeah.
And then that was pretty much it. And then I recruited you to come play or run cross country because that was just like we were just trying to get all of our friends to just hang out with us for that.
I'm like, what's
season.
the fun part of this sport? Like outside of the running?
Yeah.
Like, oh no, it's just running.
That's all it was. That's all
Brutal.
it was. But it was good for you. And honestly, cross country was one of the most fun activities we did just because of the group of people that did it.
That was the only reason I did it, was for the group of people.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to get me in shape for basketball season. And I remember going to the first practice after, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to be good. I can run 3 miles, no problem. Just totally different. It's pure agility and sprinting.
just
And
like
it
every
was
other
like I
sport.
was just like anybody else.
I love you guys, but I would not run cross country to hang out with you. I don't care. If that was the only way we could ever hang out, I would not be running.
Yeah, I mean that
was
carried.
cool,
that
though.
was a pretty fun activity, and then we had basketball, and then you golfed in the spring, and I did track, and then Yeah, I mean, after that, senior year, we graduated, and then it was just like a handful of us that stayed back for the year or two after. And I think we hung out a ton that year, probably.
Yeah, that first year. Because I think it was the second year that you went to Lansing.
Yeah, I moved to Lansing the second year, and then you went to Central, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then there was probably 2-3 years while you were at Central, and I didn't see you for maybe not that long, but a couple years where I didn't see you nearly as often.
Yep. And then after graduation, it was like you moved. You moved to Holland, right?
Yep.
And we would just go do trips. We would just start traveling. And that was kind of how we stayed in touch.
So
we
much
would just
traveling.
go places together, or I would just drive over. Like I was driving like crazy then.
That I was thinking about it not that long ago because we were talking about Airbnbs, and I remember when I moved to Holland that very first year, I didn't know a single person that lived there. I'd never even been to the west side of the state. Just picked my life up and moved it, 2 hours over, and I was like kind of not making a ton of money then. So it was like kind of hard to pay rent and pay all my bills and pay my student loans and then go have fun. So I remember renting my apartment on Airbnb before it was like a thing, before it was allowed.
I
Like
didn't know you did that.
Yeah, for a couple years. And it paid the one summer, every weekend for 14 weeks in a row, it was rented. And that paid for me to go meet up with Brad, and we would go anywhere we could.
Wow, that's cool.
Because you also used to get all those GM cars once a quarter.
Yep.
So we would just get a nice Corvette or a Tahoe, and we would just go on a road trip for no reason. And I couldn't even tell you where we went. Like, I know we did the UP a couple of times. I know we did some up north trips, and we went to see some people down south. But
Yeah, like Indiana.
yeah, it was just like we're going no matter what.
Yeah, all sorts of places.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
even if it's only a few hours away, it's still a good opportunity to just, go hang out, separate yourselves from whatever other BS you got going on. Just go enjoy the company.
And then I guess from there, I mean, it just kind of
You had to move further away.
yeah, that was years later. But I would just say, like, from that time of living in West Michigan, like, the only time I got to come back here to home was my family all moved away from the Algonac area, was to hang out with Brad. And it was like maybe, I don't know, a few times a year. Like, I'd come back in the winter. I'd come back a couple times in the summer. Yeah, raft off or to go boating with you guys.
Yeah.
But at that time when you were boating, that was like peak party boating, going to the bay, going to the Moot every weekend. And I remember coming all the way back to do that and then thinking, yeah, I'm just kind of bored of doing that. I don't want to go out of my way. And then it was like not that long after you were like, I'm done with this. I'm selling the boat. I'm not really worried about going to the bay every weekend.
That was right when Katie got involved.
Yeah, I wanted to start dating Brad because he had a boat, and then he
that's
sold
why.
it.
It wasn't even that nice of a boat. Come on.
It was the Sea Ray. That thing was
I lived in Lansing.
It was
no
great
one
for
had
back
boats,
then.
It was cool. It wasn't the reason why I wanted to do
No, it was the
but
hockey
was
rink.
a
You've already
perk.
said this.
Well,
It was a perk.
the first boating we did, I boated my whole life growing up here, but it was like pontoons and fishing boats and a cruiser once in a while that my parents' friends had. And then his grandpa had, what boat was that?
The Chaparral. The
Yeah,
XLC.
Bobby knows it well.
The Chaparral, and he took us out on that a few times. And then Brad got to the point where he could take the boat out, and then we were going out on that any chance we got.
Yeah, and then my grandpa had to transfer the title because he's like, I'm not being liable for that thing.
Yeah.
No way. I'm like, all right, sweet, got a boat.
Yeah, and then ran that thing right into the
We sunk
the
it
bottom,
3 times.
the bottom of the
at
lake.
least.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going to raft off the one year, and we were like a mile. We were like by Cabana, like we were not very far, and the thing just dies, and we're all just sitting there like, what do we do now? And we end up calling Joe Lou, and we're like, have you gone to raft off? He's like, no, I'm about to. I'm getting in my little boat, and we're like, we need a tow. And his parents gave him the keys and said, take center console or whatever their bigger
Yeah, that
boat
pro
was.
line.
Yeah, the pro line, and he just came out, hooked us up, dragged the boat back in, and then we all hopped on his boat, and went to raft off.
Joe Lou, man, what a legend.
Oh, I know.
Legend.
I wonder what that guy's up to.
Don't
He's
know.
local. He's around.
Is he?
I've heard stories. Yeah.
I hope I run into him at some point. I'd just love to honestly just give him a hug, just ask him how he's doing. It's been so long. And his big gangly arms. You know?
And then you ended up getting the Sea Ray center console.
Yeah.
And that was like the coolest boat back then. Like it was I mean, what is it, 21?
Yeah,
And
Yep.
it seemed like in my head it was like a 31.
I know. It seems so big.
Yeah, now looking at it, I'm like, that was the tiniest boat that we shoved like 9 people at a time on and just hammered across the lake to go to the bay every Sunday.
It was an easy clean. That's why it was perfect.
Yeah, that was
You
what
just
was nice.
hose
Just
it off afterward. Yeah.
Is that what you had?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the boat that you saw. Yeah.
That was the boat that locked
I
in the
saw
deal
one
with you.
time.
Yeah, you're like, man, look at this.
I got to
thing."
go on one time, and actually the one time that I did go on, Brad did almost sink it,
Yeah.
and he had to
Yeah,
jump in the water.
Didn't put the drain plug in. Classic.
Yeah.
Is
I'm
it?
like, what is this guy doing?
Is it-
Pretty
classic?
I think so. Yeah.
There's-
For a guy who owns a boat?
For the Fairhaven community, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. For a 21-year-old or 22-year-old.
But I did manage to put the plug in while the boat was in the water by just jumping in and, screwing that thing in.
And he was
what are you gonna
27
do?
by this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll move on from
Still
that.
make mistakes. That's why I was like, all right, got to get rid of this thing.
But it was some point when you had that boat and I wasn't coming over as often. When would you have sold that boat? What year do you think that was?
Probably 2018.
Okay, so it was probably a few years before you actually sold it is when we started hanging out with Jeff Reel a ton because of Jen, our mutual friend that was with Jeff at the time. And that was like a game changer looking back on it, because I remember Jeff going over to Jeff's house when Jen invited us, and she lived there, so Jen and Jeff's house, and we went there, and I remember just Mad was all excited to go boating, and I was just kind of like, okay, we're driving all the way over here to go boating on the lake I've been to a billion times, and we get to Jeff's house and we walk out back, and I want to say he had a sport boat and maybe a 34 at his house or whatever at that time. And we hopped on it and we went out, and I was just like, dude, what is this boat? And he's like, it's a Sensation. It's built in Elginak. And I was like, obviously knew who Sensation was, but didn't know anything about Sensation, because growing up and driving by that
we
place.
knew him.
Yeah, you just knew there'd be a cool boat in the front every once in a while, but most of the time the doors were shut and you didn't really know what was going on unless you were in that community pretty much.
I would just see those cars driving around.
Yeah.
What's that huge lifted?
Oh, the 650.
No, the
car.
Kamazer.
Oh, the Kamazer, yeah.
I would see it in like the MJR parking lot, and I'd have I thought they just were like custom cars or something like that. No idea.
It's funny you say that, because I've gone into a restaurant at some point in the last couple of years around here, and I was wearing a Sensation shirt, and the girl was like, you guys like make custom cars, don't you?
Yeah, it's that.
And
it's
I was
the
like,
Kamazer.
she's like, I see them all over, all the logos. And I was like, no, the guys like to customize cars. But yeah, looking back on that, I mean, that was like the first intro to Sensation that I really had and kind of got. And Jeff, after that, we just started becoming really close with Jeff and getting more involved. And I feel like we're skipping a few years there, but really, I mean, that was the path we went on.
Yeah, and that really set up the rest of like all the way to today.
Yeah, it definitely was a huge stepping stone into what led us to where we're at, for
So
sure.
I sold the boat and bought your drone with it. You had a drone at the time.
Yeah.
And that was like my thing. I was going towards that. I was going to fly this drone and just, go out on boats, other people's boats, which was totally different for me because I had owned a boat for 10 years. And it was pretty fun to just do that and not be responsible for the boat, because I would get so stressed out taking that boat out.
Yeah, I
really
remember.
would. I mean, you
rightfully
sink a
so.
boat 3 times, you're going out, you're drinking, you're underage. Like, there was just a lot of like.
Yeah, I saw
you
your
get worried.
alcohol intake went way down
Way
over
down,
time, where
yeah.
it's like at some point you just stop drinking because it's just not worth it.
No, couldn't get anything done.
And just looking back on it, we were just putting ourselves in such bad situations. Like, they always worked out.
How did we
but,
never get in trouble?
because we're locals and we know how to do it. We're not coming from the other side of the lake, so
Oh, God, we got lucky.
yeah.
Knock on
on
some wood, please.
Yeah, sure. We don't do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and then looking back on you said the drone thing, it is funny because I remember you got a GoPro before I did when I first moved to Holland. And we were using it for like our really first ski trips we went on, and there's doing stuff around here and just hanging out. And then you got kind of bored of that. I think you sold your GoPro, and I ended up buying one. And that was at the same time I was starting to like lean way more into marketing at my last job. And I was like, all right, I want to do marketing. And I got my hands on a drone like before many people really had personal drones. And I remember using it, and I was just always so anxious of like crashing it and not having $1,000 to go buy another one. And I hated flying it. So I kind of let it collect dust. And then eventually Brad was like, hey, I'm thinking I want to do something a little different. And then you're at GM at that time, just doing your SAP thing. And I just remember being like, well, you can definitely take this, but I don't know what you're going to really plan on doing with it. Like, it's fun to have and play with here and there, but how are you going to make this a career outside of GM? And yeah, now it's pretty funny looking back on that, I guess.
In your face.
I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I like snowboarding, I like golfing, I like boating. I'm like, I need to find a hobby that actually makes money because I'm spending a lot.
Yeah, and like some pretty expensive hobbies too.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any more expensive than those.
What was the drone? Was it a Mavic?
It was a
Yeah.
DJI one for sure.
Was it like the first iteration of that or something?
Yeah, I think it was like the first Air.
No, it was
Or it was a Pro.
It was a Pro. They didn't even have air back then.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was the first Pro one that they had come out with, and I spent the money I did not have and bought it. And I just wanted to play with it. Like, I just thought it was cool. I liked the content you could get for marketing purposes, but I just never really enjoyed the process of flying the drone. Like, I always liked the output, but I never really enjoyed having to go somewhere and have your hands cold and maybe losing it. And I did crash multiple in that. Before I sold you one, I put one in a tree.
Yeah.
I put one into the side of a building. Like, it just sucked. Somehow I always got them back and they worked, but
And then you sold them.
and then I sold them. And it is still to this day one of those things that I mean, I don't own a GoPro and I don't own a drone. I mean, I would like to have one once in a while, but I just am not that kind of person to like put the effort into keeping it consistent and
Yeah.
using it the way you can use those things.
You always had like the next cool little gadget. It seemed like.
Still do.
You know.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
you're never afraid to put the money forward to try something.
No,
Like
not at
the
all.
amount of like you brought over a box of audio equipment to my house. It was like several microphones, a recorder, and it was when you were podcasting.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I'm not using this anymore. So if you think you could get some use out of this, so I respect that you kind of just go for it, even if it doesn't work out. Who cares? And also, as like a side effect of that, your friends get to try out other things. So it's like
Yeah.
Brad got his start through you just because you gave it a shot, and you're like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
good. You try this, maybe it's better for you. I still use all that audio equipment that you dropped off.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
So
That's good.
if you're a creative person, two, you're incentivizing other people's creativity just by giving them the shit that you don't want anymore because it wasn't there for you. But it
Yeah.
seems like you get it enough of a positive experience out of just trying it in the first place.
Yeah, I just kind of learned over the years what where my creative mindset is, the productivity side, the process side, and I've kind of just like learned to accept like what makes me, and the parts that of me that make things difficult to be good at what you guys do is the process and the procedure and just the dedication to being organized, having dedicated files, like everything about it, and the education. I don't care about camera settings. I don't care about any of that. All of you guys learned how to use a camera better than I've ever used one within a week of working with Brad. And he tried to teach me, and I just didn't care. I was like, it's not about that for me. Like,
Yeah.
But
I do like...
You think about how we got started with all of that and like how you got the drone, you got the audio equipment for Bobby. It was the same way with Scrapyard. Like we started that together and then you kind of moved on to something else and it got the ball rolling for us. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it worked in so many different areas. And I feel like that's just something that you do with people around you. You kind of spark creativity for them and then let them roll with it and then just kind of advise from the background.
Yeah, I mean, especially with my friends, like people I know I'm going to be around. And like there was plenty of times when Brad was like, I want to get really good at this, where I'm like, awesome, I'll have somebody to take really dope photos of me and videos when I want. It's a huge win, and it is a huge win. But yeah, I mean, it is, I'm pretty good at spotting things and people and knowing kind of like, just if I know them well enough or I've seen their work, I can kind of get a good idea of a vision for where they could go or what they could accomplish. And there was a lot of that in early Scrapyard days or Quality Drone Co. days and all of that, you know. I mean, we worked on that stuff for at least a few years together before I like slowly stepped away from it. And that was a long few years of figuring it out.
And I don't know how many people know that was a partnership between you and I that started the whole thing. And I think the first big project that we did was the In the Lead series with Matt and Jason at Speed on the Water.
Oh, yeah. That was because everything up until that point, I was just more or less like Brad was getting the deal, like getting the work with Unreal, which then slowly was leading into work with Sensation. And I was living in Marquette this whole time when we were doing that. And I was just working remote, and I would hop on calls and I would help, I helped build the original Sensation website and write all the copy for it.
Right.
And I would just kind of like help Brad because I was working in marketing, so I knew that side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't really in a point in my life when I thought I was going to be, wanting to do that type of work with you down here in our hometown. It just didn't even seem realistic. So looking back on it, it's hilarious how many hours I spent at a table just like this in my mom's house in Marquette on calls with Brad trying to strategize about business ideas and strategies and clients and projects and all of that stuff. And it doesn't really seem like it was that long ago, but it kind of was now, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was back in 2019, so it's been 6 years.
Yeah, that's wild to even hear.
Yeah, well, thanks for laying all that groundwork so that I could just quit my job and fill that gap that you left when you're like, all right, I'm good. And I'm like,
well,
I'm not take it from here.
If I'm honest, I think maybe if I told you this before, if not, you'll enjoy hearing it now. Like, I never wanted to own Scrapyard. I never really wanted to. I did it, and I did it with Brad, but I only did it because Brad wanted my help, and he very clearly told me, like, dude, I need you for these reasons. And it was always a very motivating feeling to know, like, you're needed, and one of your good friends has, a gap that you can fill for them. Why wouldn't I do it? But I never really looked at it as something I was going to do long term. Like, it was never like, I'm going to work at Scrapyard, we're going to build this into a media agency or production or this or that. It was always just like, yeah, this is good for me to do because it's with a good friend. I'm helping him. I'm helping myself. And
it's fun.
And it was fun. Yeah. And it was the strategy stuff, like the stuff I was doing with you back then. That's the easiest part of all of this to me. Like my vision, my ability to kind of connect the dots and everything. That's the stuff that I don't even think about it. And I don't realize how hard it is for others to do. But that's where the value was. And it was only a few years in before I realized, like, oh, Brad's got this. Like, this is his baby. He wants this to be his baby, and I eventually will have to step back and let him have this and just run with it and be there if you ever need it.
I tried to keep you on as long as I could.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been times where I'm a little envious of not being with Scrapyard anymore, and like certain projects that I like the Supercat thing kind of spawned from ideas we had back in the day, and it was awesome to see it actually come true.
Yeah,
and see how it was executed was nothing like what we originally thought it could be, and it came out way better. But yeah, I mean, those are the things that kind of kicked it off early on, and then there was a lot of little turning points in that time that got us to here now.
Yeah, and a big piece of you being more involved with Scrapyard was getting that job at Sensation.
Yeah.
Which at the time I had left GM to go work full time at Sensation.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been there for, I think, maybe a year. And then Joe Sheldon Brand was like, when are you going to start doing the sales, Brad? I'm like, wait, what? No, I came here to make videos. He's like, oh, all right. And I'm like, well, I got this buddy that's pretty good at sales and marketing. Like, let's bring him down and see what he can do. And then before you know it, you're living back home again.
It was a heck of a transition from COVID times and doing Scrapyard, which I think it was Scrapyard back then. I don't know.
It was for the In the Lead stuff.
Okay, so basically I was not really part of Quality Drone Co. That was Brad, and then we got together and made Scrapyard. Do you guys know where the name came from? Do you know? Do you remember?
Scrapyard?
I know what I tell people.
This is what I remember. I remember living in an apartment in Holland, Michigan called Scrapyard Lofts, and I remember trying to think of cool names for the business, and all we would ever say to each other is, because we never had time to shoot boats, and I obviously wasn't really shooting boats back then, but it was just very hard, and I would always just tell Brad, you got to get scrappy with this. Like, figure it out, repurpose content, hack something together, And then I remember we connected the dots, and there was something with Scrapyard, there was something in relation to Algonac, and I'm drawing a blank on what it was. But that's what I remember, and then eventually we landed on it, and you guys ran with it after that.
I forgot about the lofts piece of it, but I always tell people it was just because we had to get scrappy with stuff. We had to rip videos. We had to take crappy GoPro footage and make reels out of it.
Yeah.
There wasn't even reels back then, but videos out of it.
Even still to this day, we're still piecing stuff together like that.
Yeah.
For any of these videos that we've made, there's been a moment where we've ripped something off YouTube, or we have to go find something old, or you just make it work.
Yesterday, we had a call with a potential client, and they're like, hey, we got all this video from last year. Like, I don't know if it's worth anything. You think you can make some, like, promotional content out of it? I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, we've done that a million times with, like, the worst footage. Like, whatever you got, send it over.
And that I think that's still the mindset you guys should always have is get scrappy because it's harder as you get, more projects and you have more opportunities to film and do the stuff you want to. But I think those who can continue to take, this piece of paper and rip it in half and then rip it in half again and just keep going, get the most out of it, they're going to be the ones who always win long term. You're always going to have the best opportunities in front of you.
It's a good mentality to have too, where you never feel like you're in a corner. You're kind of always like, we can get out of this. We can make it work.
Yeah.
Oh, the drone didn't work, or it was raining. Like look at Katawa. Oh, the event didn't happen.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. We've been in worse.
So in COVID, then we start Scrapyard. I moved down from Marquette in the UP to Milford. Milford, which was all based on the job I had previously to help oversee an office that was in that area, which was kind of cool because the second I moved back down, I was so much more connected with Brad and coming back to this area and getting involved. And you would just bring me in for shoots and random stuff just to help and be around Sensation. And then I specifically remember when we were talking, when you brought the opportunity up about me maybe working at Sensation, because we were driving back from an event somewhere, something we had done, a shoot, something. And you were like, would you ever want to work at Sensation? And Brad is notorious for just throwing out crazy ideas with no context and not giving any background. And I'm like, yeah, I would definitely entertain it. And I was pretty burnt out at my last job at that time. And I was starting to see the opportunity that was in front of us with Scrapyard. And I was like, yeah, of course, man. And I was like, what's the role? And he's like, sales. And I'm like, okay, easy. Like I do that. I know how to do that. This can't be that hard. I sell IT projects that cost more than these boats. So like this has to be an easier sell. It's not an easier sell. But it all happened so fast. I mean, it was like within a week of that conversation, Brad said, all right, the owners want to have a meeting with you. I drove back over, sat down with all the owners and Brad. And by the end of that meeting, I had an offer to come work there. And I was like, man, I really don't want to just start working here like next week. So I took like a month off or 6 weeks off. And it was actually during those 6 weeks, we had a video for In the Lead due, which was, I want to say it was the John Kosker one.
Okay.
And I just remember putting all my time, wake up, have a nice morning routine and edit. And for that whole time, and I would get it to the point where I hand it to you and you make it look really good. Like laying the story out and everything. Mm-hmm. And I remember like getting to the end of that 6 weeks and I'm about to start a Sensation and just finishing that video and then having to go into Sensation, learn this new role, this company, this place, which I have my own mindset around how you do that well, but then also continue on the, after hours working with Scrapyard and doing that stuff. And very quickly I kind of learned okay, you're going to be a Sensation employee. You're not going to be a Scrapyard employee. You're going to put your effort in at Sensation because I'm smart enough to know you can try to dedicate the time to multiple big projects, but neither will get the attention they deserve if you don't dedicate
not at
time.
The level that you wanted to take your job at Sensation. Right. Like you had big goals for that, and in order to do that, you had to commit all of your time to it. So it was one or the other, and eventually I left Sensation, and you absorbed the stuff that I was doing, and I ran with Scrapyard, and you ran with Sensation, and that kind of got us to where we are today.
Is that 3 years ago now?
This
would be like the beginning of the third year of you being gone.
I don't know. It was close.
Yeah. I was going to ask for Katie's perspective of all of this as it was happening, like watching Brad get his best friend a job at Sensation, watching Brad quit Sensation, starting Scrapyard. Like you have to have a pretty unique perspective because sometimes I'll talk to you about stuff that we have going on and you'll be like, yeah, Brad mentioned that to me. So I always wonder like how the conversations, like was Brad like, I think Ryan might come work at Sensation. Like he had to have been pretty excited about all that.
I'd say how everything played out is pretty jaw-dropping. Like when Brad first started doing Quality Drone Co., he like came up with this big plan of what he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like to the T of like working at Sensation and Ryan coming in. But I mean, it was pretty close. Like you executed your plan pretty close to what you said you were going to do. Mm-hmm. And each year it's like, wow, he said he was going to do that. And that's what he did. And so when he started working at Sensation after leaving GM, like he told me that's what he was going to do. And I was like, okay, that seems like a crazy idea. And then he said, yeah, Ryan's going to come work at Sensation. Like, No. And then that happened.
Everyone said that.
And then he said he's going to leave Sensation. I'm like, what are you doing?
You just got this
Like,
perfect.
come on. And then he's like, nope, we're going to do this. And then he's like, and actually, you're going to come work for Scrapyard. And I'm like, okay. And then Bobby. And then here we are. So everything that he said with what was going to happen has happened. So
That's probably something that's worth mentioning is that I had kind of said like I had my reasons for wanting to work with Scrapyard and you in the beginning. And there was a big part of it that was basically like, I know Brad, I know the DiMaggios, I know Brian and Brad, I know their family. If there's any humans on the earth that are going to set a goal and work every day to achieve that goal and do it the right way, it's going to be Brad and Brian. And that was part of the reason I was like not upset about dedicating a lot of time to work that did not really pay us anything much back then. And just knowing like it will come into something, it will come to fruition. It will, I never thought I'd be in the high performance marine world and probably stay here the rest of my life if I can.
Yeah.
But I did know that something good, positive, an opportunity would come of it one day, and never thought it'd be Sensation. And Brad did open that door. I mean, it was definitely.
Well, Jeff opened the door, right?
Jeff
or Jen opened the door. I mean, you can go back and you can say all these things had to line up perfectly for it to be where it is today. If we had a friend that was into something else that we were interested in, we probably would be in a different space right now.
I mean, I agree with that to an extent, but it also takes a specific individual that's going to take that opportunity and run with it and maximize it. And that's what he's saying you guys do.
Yeah.
Like, if you get the opportunity, you're not going to sleep on it. You're not going to think about it. You're not going to be like, I don't know, I have a really good job at GM right now. You're like, no, I hate that job. Screw it. I'm just going to go for it.
It was funny.
And we're on board.
This journal right here, you got me into this, and you said that your company started doing this with like the leadership team, and nobody could finish it. I remember you saying that. And I've been doing this journal for
I couldn't finish it.
at least 5 or 6 years, every single day. And the 1 year at the beginning when we were doing stuff with Jeff and kind of starting, I wrote the word opportunity on this journal every single morning. And that was my focus. I was like, I don't care about the money. I don't care what it is. It's like, what is this going to lead to? What are all these opportunities that I have in front of me that we can go pursue? And that was huge. The journal's huge. I love it.
we have all of the journals. So.
You're like one of like 10% of people that actually utilize it and like take it to the end.
Yeah.
Like it's marketed
That's
to
just
people.
my
like,
mind though.
Improve your life. Like use this and it will become better. Most people like me, like I got 75% through and I'm like, this is so much work. Like I'm spending more time trying to like use this thing than I am actually doing work. So
I'm currently
how is it?
attempting to use this journal, and each day I'm doing worse.
It's a
I don't
lot,
even want to
man.
write. I'm like, really? I got to write down all of these things.
It's a lot of work, but you took it and you repurposed it and you used the things that worked for you, and that makes so much sense.
Yeah. No, it's been good.
I was just going to say you're 100% right on everyone's reactions to how all this has unfolded. And the most specific one I can remember is telling my mom, hey, Mom, like things are going really well at work, because I was doing really well at my last job and I grew really fast and they gave me a lot of cool opportunities. And I started to hit these points where I'm like, okay, money is not really fixing my burnout and this and that. And I was like, even if I take a pay cut to go do this, it's going to be more fun. It's going to be cool. And I remember calling my mom and being like, yeah, Brad, he's been at Sensation. And her mindset of Sensation is when she was a bartender waiting on these guys back in when we were kids, locally. So she didn't really know what it was all about. And she was kind of like, you're going to go work at Sensation with Brad? You're going to move back to Elginak? Which was not something it was probably something I said I would never do, because I never saw an opportunity to come back here for work. And this is probably the only one that could have existed that would have got me back here, and it did.
And you think about the time when your mom was here, like 2008, 2009, it was horrible for Sensation then.
Oh, yeah.
So she's looking at this company that is just surviving.
Yes.
They're in the bar every night.
With her, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And she still has that mindset. I think a lot of our parents probably do have the old school mindset of like, no, you get a job when you're 18, you clock in at 9, you leave at 5, and you do that for 40 years, and eventually you get to hang out and retire.
Yeah.
And we were just I mean, our whole generation, but us specifically, we're just not about that.
Well, we had those jobs.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
when I remember starting at Sensation and I had multiple people ask me if I was crazy. Like, wait, you left General Motors, like one of the most secure companies and jobs that you could be at, to come work here?
Yeah.
You're like-
Remember, I was just telling you that the other day, my dad said that same thing where he was like, if you wanted to do procurement again, you could, right? Like, it's like,
That is still an option.
it's the Depression era, just like you can get more money if you need to, right? I'm like, yes, like I'll take care of my family no matter what. I'll figure it out. And my dad listens to these, so I know you're listening to this. I forgive you. I forgive you for saying that. But like, damn, man. Like, yes, this is hard. It's creative. There's no guarantee. It's a risk every year. But it was that or burnout. Just sitting there hating your life, or just like wanting to do something else and not ever thinking that you could. That would be like the most painful way to spend my time. So I don't regret the decision. Yeah, I could probably use my degree again if I wanted to. But I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
You don't want to use that anymore.
Nah, I'm done.
You check the box.
I got something out of it. I
Yeah.
got to move to a different city. I got some good experience, but yeah, I could have told you from the day I walked out of Wayne State, and I was like, this isn't long term for me.
Yeah.
And the first day I walked into Kraft Heinz, same thing. I'm like, I won't be here the rest of my life. I'm already ready to like, what's next? Now I look at this as like, I have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, and I have some goals in mind that I want to set and I want to achieve, and I feel that I can actually get there, and I want to get there. So much different. I'd never had that feeling before, sadly enough.
So when you walked into the Scrapyard office,
I'm like,
you were like, this is it.
I wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to be out of here by 2 years. I'll grow my portfolio. No, I'm like, this is something that's worth my time. And to your point, like I get behind your motivation, and I know that it's going to take us somewhere. And that faith is, that takes a lot of the weight off of like making that decision. I'm like, I know that we'll take this somewhere, and it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
If Brad writes it in that journal, it's gonna get done.
Raise for Bob. I'm
You
gonna write
start
it.
writing that
It's like
in
a
there.
magic journal. I'm gonna write it in his journal just so that it happens.
But like you said, the opportunity can be there, but it's on the individual to seize it. And I remember when Brad said, like, what do you think about me bringing Bob's on? And I was like, Bobby Boyd, like your neighbor, the kid we know right here? Because you had just maybe came back, I don't know, 6 months before. You had just moved back, and I had just came back to the area. And I loved seeing you. I loved hanging out with you back, like, because I had gone a long time without really seeing you very often. And I just remember thinking, like, I mean, Bob's has music ability. I think you wanted to be a chef, or you were really into cooking at one point.
We were
or wanted
talking
to have
about
a
opening up a restaurant. Yeah.
And I just kind of knew, like, I told Brad, he definitely has like that creative mind. I was like, but it's totally on Bobby if he's going to seize the opportunity you give him. And I was like, it's on you, Brad, to make sure that he does seize that opportunity. If he doesn't, rip the Band-Aid off, because it ain't going to be good for him to waste his time trying to build a career in something when he's going to jump back into purchasing.
Yeah, for sure. And me coming into this and Brad being a friend, like I wasn't going to take advantage of that situation. Like, yeah, I could go get a job at some corporate office and milk them until they want to fire me, and I'd be like, yeah, fair enough. Like, I get it. I'm not a superstar here. This was going to be completely different. And if I felt that way, similar to like you felt yourself kind of pulling back because you wanted, like you said, he had so many big plans for Sensation. It was like burning the candle at both ends. There was no way you could do both jobs well.
Right.
You're not going to have Brad relying on you for things that you can't provide to him. So, like, in a way, you stepping back was also a pretty noble thing to do in that moment, just to be like, it's a hard conversation. I know it had to have been, but like, it was ultimately better.
Was it hard?
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, you're.
Oh.
I did not want you to leave.
Well, but I don't feel like it was like a single combo where it was like, hey, I'm done. I think it was just more of like,
no, it wasn't. It wasn't
I was
harsh.
slipping.
Yeah, it was just like he knew you needed to go, and he hated to see you leave. Like, but that was ultimately the best thing you could have done. And I'm not saying that I would never claim that I'm the best thing that could have happened in that scenario, because
That thing you just did.
so cocky. But like, just that opportunity opening the door for me as I'm at home getting ready to leave a job because they wanted me to move back and I didn't want to move back. Yeah, that was huge for me. And then to your point, it was just from that point, do I do it? Do I seize it? Or do I just kind of bail like I've done in the past? But here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I specifically remember thinking if Bobby, I'm going to be able to tell if Bobby is going to want to keep doing this or not, just based on talking to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was like, maybe 6 months after you started doing stuff, I was like, you had already, very quickly surpassed what anything I knew about how to actually use camera equipment. It was probably within a week or less.
Yeah, I learned what ISO and
the basics.
aperture was, and I had already passed you at that point.
It's not hard. The bar wasn't high. And I just remember like talking to Brad, and over time he was kind of like, yeah, he's going to sink his teeth into this. He wants it. And then obviously since then, because how long has it been now that you've been here?
Going on 2 years.
But it seems longer, but now that you've been here, like you guys have gone out, found your own projects. Like you've helped bring projects to the table. You execute on projects by yourself. You filmed with us.
Mm-hmm.
It is just shown that like, yeah, you have the skill set. You have to hone in on it. And hopefully you guys figure out where your best value and assets are to the company.
Yeah.
And I think you guys are doing a great job at it. I will say Brad's mindset around working with friends is different than mine has always been, and mine has changed like over time. It's still very different, but I would say I've realized that you can make that work.
If you can have the hard conversations, then you can do it.
I mean, it still makes things really hard all the time, but it is just kind of, I would rather have that as the difficult challenge than somebody I don't have a relationship with who is just an approver on the other end or a vendor that doesn't really care, things like that. It definitely works out, but that was not a mindset I was down with originally.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you guys think things go from here? I mean, you're pretty in the weeds with Sensation. We've got some aspirations on projects. Like, do you think that you'll get back into the creative side of things? Or, I guess for you first, Ryan, what do you think is
just like in general in the future?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could look back at the last 10 years and be like, oh my God, how did all that happen? What is the plan? What is next?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely have always had a pretty specific vision for myself. Like graduating, I could have gone and taken a job at a big corporate type of company. I had all the skills and resume to do that. But I knew I wanted to work at a small business, and that was always where my mind has been. Small business, treat it like you guys are family members, just can get more done. You can show your value a lot faster. So like some of the stuff that I set in my mind way back then never altered. It might have veered a little bit, but it never really changed all that much. And looking forward now, I would just say I think I'm at a point right now where I'm the most okay I've ever been with not having an idea of what the next 5 years looks like. Mm-hmm. You can stress yourself out really hard trying to worry about, what you're going to do when the next promotion is, when the next this is. And I've fallen into that trap. And I do have probably more vision than most for what I want to see out of my future, but it's a very simple vision. And it's not something I have to put a lot of thought into as long as I'm showing up every day, doing the work, have my heart in it, and I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and I like the people I'm with. I mean, we're gonna go like this, and it's gonna be 2035, and I'm gonna be 15 years at this company and living in the town I grew up in, which is just wild. I don't think I ever lost the creative side. I think I just learned where my creative skill sets are probably best used in some ways, and I'm still learning what that looks like.
You still utilize them with us too, though.
I mean, I have to. Yeah. I would say from a creative standpoint, I'm very much so a big part of Brad's polish and your guys' perfection on how you create content and tell stories. I was a part of how Brad got to that point. He's honed in on it on his own since then. But the creativity side of it is something that I just have, and I will never let it go away. I'm always going to have crazy ideas, crazy ambitions, video projects, brands, businesses to play with and stuff, and that marketing is my creative outlet, and right now that is mainly focused on Sensation. Maybe it'll be different in the future.
Every day when I see your sun run countdown, I'm like, wow, how do you think of that? That was a creative idea.
Keeping the sun run
Instagram
going?
Story? No, your
meme.
countdown, your memes.
Your meme posts.
I'm like, that was funny. Yeah,
I got to be honest, the main driver of creativity right now for me in this industry is just trolling people.
Oh my God.
I think that this is a wave we're riding, and we all jumped on this wave at a very opportunistic time to get involved with this industry. If we would have joined it 10 years sooner, it would have been very different. We probably couldn't have joined it. or even 10 years from now. But yeah, just overall the creativity that goes into doing that stuff and everything else that we're doing. I mean, it's day by day. It's fun. It's easy. And I just put time into small things over time. And I think it's a good, healthy balance. I've found myself not having creative outlets for long periods of time. And I mean, I can go back and tell you when I was in like more of a depressed mindset for just based on what I posted on Instagram for 3 months in a row. You know, like it's pretty obvious. If I'm not publishing, it's because my creative's not there. And that means something else is wrong with Ryan. If I'm publishing and I have ideas and I'm putting stuff out there and taking the time, it means I'm in a healthy mindset right then.
You might have some people checking up on you.
Yeah,
now that you
noted.
threw that out there.
Yeah, it's a trend that I didn't know. It wasn't intentional. It was just like after years of looking back and seeing like there was a summer I didn't post anything. It's because my head was down working with Brad on video projects, editing, trying to teach myself how to edit and tell stories, and then like didn't really put any time in anything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you had this polished, nice product that you put out there, but it wasn't anything like that you were putting out on your pages.
Yeah, it was. I mean, at that time, it wasn't a part of me. I didn't think I was. I thought I might work in this industry, but I never thought I would be in the industry like the way we are right now. And even now, I still question like, should I attach my name to this industry or this brand or Scrapyard in any long-term
I think
way?
you're past that point. You're pretty.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely feel that, and I love it too. It's easy. It feels right, and it's taken years to get to that point.
Well, tell me a little bit about your ideas with Brandon's film. I wanted to throw that out there. Our friend Brandon passed away in a car accident, a couple months ago now? It hasn't been that long.
Yeah, almost probably pushing November, December, January. 3 months.
3 months, yeah. And we have a lot of footage. We filmed a lot with him. He was a great kid. And you have some ideas on some long-term projects to kind of just keep him in memory. So,
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I wish I could share, like, here's the vision I have to tell Brandon's story, but it's still actively unfolding, I think. I don't think his story ended when he passed away. You know, we have the court case. The next court case is in, like, a week from Monday.
okay.
You know, his boat is still in my workshop. His photo is everywhere in that old building. It's like his story is not over yet, and we got to see it through. And I do have ideas on the film and stories we can tell and how to keep Brandon's memory alive forever. And I've put less effort into trying to define what that story looks like because I know it from my angle, and I know my story about Brandon for the short period of time I knew him. But there needs to be more time spent on continuing to build relationships with his brothers, his family, his other coworkers who I'm not as close with, and just his childhood friends to really get a full picture of who Brandon was. Because, man, he lived lives before we knew him. Many lives. Dude,
You're
the stories
finding
I've
that
heard.
out, yeah.
Oh, the stories I've heard. But his memory's still alive. I mean, I've been wearing a vintage Merc jacket pretty much every day, and it was probably a month after he passed. It was on Christmas Day, actually. And I woke up at like 6 a.m. and I just went on eBay and I just had this urge to buy a vintage jacket like Brandon always would talk about. And it was actually the last text he sent me was, we should buy all the old Merc racing and vintage boat company windbreakers we can find and then go sell them elsewhere. And I don't really know that that's exactly what I'm going to do, but I just started buying all of them and wearing them every day. And people know that I wasn't wearing these stuff before, and I would never have done it if Brandon was still here because that was his thing. That was one of his cool factors that he had, and he loved it. And now I just do it every day just to be reminded of Brandon, and I think it does remind everyone else too.
For sure.
So between that and just like us putting, like, we made the little Brandon stickers and we put them all over for a while, and we put them in boats. In the boats
I saw
he
that
built.
customer picture. That was cool.
Yeah, we put them in the last boat Brandon built behind the dash. The customer found it the other day and sent me a picture. And it was just cool, man. Like, I miss that kid more than I could describe. And it is still super tragic how this all went down and just unfair. But to look at anybody who's left an impact, like, there's not many people that if they pass, I would feel like this. You know, if any of you guys were in the same situation, I would feel the same level of, I don't know, sadness, I guess.
Grief.
Grief, yeah. But Brandon and I just had a friendship that was unique to us, and I think he had that with all of his friends and coworkers. And I just want to learn more about what that is so that I can, when we do go to tell that story, that it is as thorough and stout as it can be, because he deserves that. He was robbed of what he could have accomplished.
Yeah.
And that our story will help at least put a cap on where he was before and also how he's still impacting us. I mean, I know you're not in the shop as often, but walk over to assembly and you see hints of Brandon in everything the guys are doing, wearing, how we talk. I mean, we made a little emoji for Microsoft Teams that is Brandon. And instead of thumbs upping stuff, when people post messages, it's a Brandon thumbs up, you know, the same little graphic.
Yeah.
So it is fun. It's a productive way to remember him. And I hope that we get to tell the story, because when you brought me into Sensation, Brandon was one of the first people you introduced me to. And I shook his hand and I'm just like, yeah, he seems like a guy I could hang out with.
Yeah, you get that vibe immediately.
Yeah. I mean, there's just certain people that you're kind of like that for me. Like, I could go a decade without seeing you, and if I ran into you, we'd just pick right back up, and we have very similar interests and style and mindset, and it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon was like that for me. So it's a very hard thing to talk about. Like, I kind of want to cry right now, but
That's
Yeah.
okay.
it has definitely been like nothing but a pleasure to have his memory in front of us every day. And it sucks knowing what happened, but man, he is a motivating guy to think about day to day.
And I'm really looking forward to putting that together in whatever form it is.
Yeah.
I know we're going to work together on that. I'm sure we'll all have some input on it.
Yeah.
But that'll be something that we can be really proud of making when that's done.
I told his dad that one of his brothers or his dad, I was mentioning that, you know, it was during when we did the thing at Sensation, kind of the celebration of life, the day after his funeral, which was way better than the funeral. The funeral was just so hard. And then the celebration of life was a lot easier, still very hard, but just way more quaint, just our people, his Sensation family. And I put a bunch of photos and videos, most of the ones you had taken, basically up on the screen so everyone could see them and we could just kind of look at all that stuff. And I was talking to his brother and I was like, yeah, you guys probably don't even know this. I'm like, Brandon and I had ambition to start a podcast. And he was like, what? Brandon never told us he was doing a podcast. I'm like, well, he didn't really do it. We did it once or twice. I think maybe just even once.
Once. We said we still have it.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, yeah, we sat down and we talked for over an hour, and I was like, I couldn't even tell you what we talked about. And
Too long.
you know, I had asked Brad to come back and not that long ago, maybe after it happened, and I was like, Brad, I really want you to get all the Brandon footage we have together, and I want to come over and look at it. And the reason I haven't come to look at it is because it's really fucking sad. It's just really sad to look at and
Too
think
hard.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and doing things like wearing a vintage jacket every day to honor him, and you know, posting him on social media, and people probably don't even know he's like Easter egged on the Sunrun website. And
Really?
That's
I
what
didn't
I-
even see that.
that's what I mean when I say like I'm trolling people. Like the creativity that I'm going to start putting into Sensation in my work and my name being attached to this is going to be long con format. Like I've been doing stuff that people don't even realize for a year and things like that. So it is fun to get his name out there. And I do think when we do sit down to make that content, when this story feels like we got to get through that court date and make sure and support his family and make sure that justice is served on that, which not much we can do other than show up and hope. And that we're very close to that. And once that goes by, I think it's going to be a level of closure for everybody right now that will then spark a little creativity on where does that story actually go.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to getting to that point and seeing it all unfold. And I'm glad that we're in the position that we are to be able to do that, where we don't have to, you don't need to hire somebody and pay them a bunch of money to come in and do this. We're just doing this because it's the right thing to do. So,
Is Brandon's family still running donations?
Donations.
There was an organization. It was
yeah,
like
Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or was it just donating in his name?
Yeah, that was just instead of like, sending flowers and stuff, donate
Send
to
it here.
Mad. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that they would appreciate. It's always a good organization to
Yeah, no
support.
matter
And
what.
it's something that I think everyone has their own opinion or experiences with that stuff, drunk driving, all that in different formats. And it's something that my eyes are completely open in a different way they ever could have been. I mean, to drive by the same crash site every day when I go to work. Every day I nod my hat to the cross that Johnny and those guys made and put on the side of the road. But they're not really, I think they're just trying to get back to living their life. And their lives will never be the same. And Brandon's brother just had a kid. And that kid will never get to know how cool his uncle was,
No, he'll know because
He
we're
will
going to
know.
make sure that he knows.
Yeah, and that's the moral of it.
Yeah.
This kid was so fucking cool. Day to day, I would go out of my way to leave and drive 15 minutes to run an errand, and I would go out of my way to see Brandon just because he would always brighten your day.
Yeah.
And that is the cool factor that I want to continue to bring into everything he had his hands on for years at Sensation. But his parent, the one cool thing that came from this, and I can't say it's cool, but on the bright side is that it is amazing to meet all Brandon's friends and family since then and still engage with them. And we have a group chat, Brandon and the boys, and it's just like 10, 15 random guys, customers, kids, like just everyone. And we don't barely know those guys and they don't really know us, but we all have that connection. And we get together now like once a month and go do a lap around.
I think we're due.
I think we are due. I think we definitely need to do, is it a loop or a lap?
I think it's the loop.
Yeah, the Brandon Loop in New Baltimore where he'd go stop at all the local bars and talk to his favorite people and all that. We are due for that. And you will see Brandon's name, his likeness, and everything that I'm involved with at Sensation for the rest of my life. And there will be no permission asking to do that. It will just be there. It will just happen.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to end it. I do want to talk to you about the Sun Run, which is coming up. It's the 4th, I think, the 4th annual now.
Oh, 4th, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll save that. Maybe we'll have you back on around the August time and
I can't believe
dig into it a little
we
bit.
haven't had you on before this.
I know.
I feel like podcasting kind of started with you in this friend group, and it took us a long time.
You say that. I don't remember.
You and Matt.
I know. I just forget we even did that.
Before
And I
we
don't
do.
remember why we did that.
Right? Before we do.
Is that, yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you
Before
were
we
making
do, oh, is that the name of it?
yeah.
We
before
were just
do.
talking about getting married and everything that we were worried about and stuff. I don't honestly. I would cringe going back to
Oh,
watching.
come on. All right. You got to
Give
go
it-
look
I
at
liked
It's
it.
on
Yeah.
Spotify.
Give it like another
That was
20
just some.
years.
It was like that was a cool way to.
We'll link
know.
it in the description.
Yeah. No, don't do that.
No,
I
we're
think
gonna
that
do
was really big in Australia or in Europe somewhere though.
Yeah,
that's where
I
we
remember
got-
you saying that.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
I
did.
thought you meant your podcast.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, what?
Like we'd publish it on the platform that puts it on everything. And I
Yeah.
remember one day waking up and there was just like, it was climbing a chart in a country that I was like, where is this? And why are they even listening to this? And it was like getting likes and follows from those guys. And
You're going to show up to a town one day and everybody's going to know your name.
They all own Sensations now. They just kept following you.
Vintage Mercury jackets. Yeah, well, it took us a long time, but thank you for making
Yeah.
the time. I know you're busy,
you guys.
so appreciate you.
have me back soon. I can talk a lot more than for an hour. You know
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm. Sure do.
We see you often.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks. Have a good day.
Am I supposed to leave?
Appreciate it. Yeah, get the fuck out of here.